So now I'd like to hand over to Kellie Mote. Kellie is the digital resource developer for CDN and is a tutor on the PDA in inclusiveness. She has been trained by the co-founder of Motivational Interviewing, Professor Stephen Rawlink, and has taken training on the use of MI in adult education contexts and with the British Psychological Society. So now I would like to hand over to Kellie. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elma. That was great. I'll just get on my webcam so I can say hello to people properly. Hello! I won't keep this on all the time, but I just think it's quite nice to start off with so I can say hello to you and give you a wave and things. It's great to see such a large number of people today for this webinar. As Emma mentioned, because there's a large number of people, it will be maybe a bit one way, although you will have opportunities to participate in the chat box, and we'll have some polling questions as well. But those of you who are familiar with our online training, you'll know that we often have breakout rooms and lots of opportunities for discussion in our full course, the PDA Inclusiveness, which is mentioned there. So those of you who are maybe joining today as a bit of a taster for that course, just bear in mind that usually you would have a lot more input, but because of the nature of this kind of webinar and the large numbers involved, it will be maybe a bit one way, but we'll have lots of videos and things like this to jazz it up a bit so you don't get fed up with my voice. For those of you who are interested in knowing more about the course that I teach on, and also Carol, who is joining us today as a participant, we can give you information about that afterwards. I know that quite a lot of you have actually already undertaken the course and are joining us today as an update, which is absolutely fantastic. That's really what we were aiming for. Inclusive Practitioner Credits is a brand new thing. This is almost the first event which has IP credits attached to it. And again, in the email afterwards, there'll be more information about that and how to claim your credits, if that's something you want to sign up to. So a little overview of today. We'll look at what motivational interviewing is. It's perhaps a term you've heard bouncing around but aren't quite sure exactly what it is. We'll look at why and when you should use it, when it might be useful to use, what the actual process involves, how it might improve your assessments, which obviously is the theme for today. And we'll also look at dealing with difficult situations, because that's a particular strength of MI, is dealing with kind of difficult, awkward topics that maybe need to be addressed but people aren't ready to talk about. So we'll look at that as well. Now, I think at this point, yes, I'm going to ask some questions from you guys, just using some polls, and this will help me to get an idea of how much you guys know, and for each other just to know, you know, what each other's background is, what we're doing, and what we know already. So I think my lovely assistant there, you're so on the ball there already. Elma has brought up these polling questions. This is just to find out a bit about you guys and what you're doing. It's just useful for me, so people are just clicking away like mad already. Fantastic. Okay, so it's quite an even spread there actually. Not everyone is doing needs assessments for disabled students allowance, but indeed some of you are. We've got a real mix of people doing extended learning support, college-based provision, general kind of needs-led assistive tech support, and we've also got some people who are kind of interested in the process and just want to know a bit more about it. So that's fantastic. If everybody's voted, fantastic. We'll bring up the next one. So I should turn my webcam off because I go like this. Look at the poll questions. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is tied in a bit with the Professional Development Award in Inclusiveness. Now, this also used to be called Bright Training, so you might know it as that. But we're just interested to know how many of you have actually undertaken that training already, are doing it at the moment, or are just not done any at all. That's completely okay. Interesting. Okay, people having a good old wee click there. interesting actually. There's quite a lot of you haven't undertaken any of it yet. So if that's something you'd like to know more about, we can send you information afterwards. But equally, this webinar should work in a standalone context as well. So don't worry about that. It's not sales pitch for the course. Just in case you're interested. And here's our final question. There we go. Elma's doing the business, stretching that out. This is just really for my own interest, just to gauge things that you might know about that already that might need a bit of explanation. That's interesting. Yeah, quite a lot of people are already familiar with things like person-centred and humanistic counselling. That's useful to know because, as we'll discover, motivational interviewing doesn't actually have a theoretical base, which is quite unusual, but it has grown out of a person-centred and humanistic approach. But as we'll discover, it's kind of like, I kind of think of it as turbocharged person-centred solution finding, in that it's very focused and it really moves people forward very quickly rather than going on kind of forever. But the values and ethos is very much the same. A couple of you have heard of motivational interviewing already, and I noticed no one's heard of self-determination theory. That's completely okay. You might have done, but by another name. If you're familiar with especially some of the work that's come out of Glasgow Psychological Services, they do a lot of work about motivation. And they don't often refer to it as self-determination theory, but that's what it's actually, a lot of it is built on or is very congruent with. If you're familiar with the work of Alan McLean, who did a book, Motivating Every Learner, and he's also done a free module for the professional learning area in College Development Network website on motivated college, it's very much congruent with self-determination theory. You don't have to know about it for this webinar, but if you're interested, I have put together a handout for after the session, which has got reading lists, websites, lots of useful stuff for you to follow up any of these ideas and see if they're useful to you. Okay, that was really useful. Thank you very much for your input. And again, throughout the session, if you do have any feedback or comments or questions, please use the chat box. Be really interested to hear your thoughts. So I think what we're going to do now is move to the next screen, and my webcam's going to go, so this is your last chance. I'm sure you're really upset, your last chance to see me kind of looking down the computer at you. Just it can kind of speed things up a bit if I'm not on screen. Oh, there we go, Elma's kind of on the ball. I'm really impressed. Fantastic. Okay, so what is motivational interviewing? Only a couple of you had actually heard of it before. I'm not really surprised because it's very recently, we're really on the cusp of it coming into education. So I think, you guys, by attending this webinar today, you're really kind of at the vanguard of educators because it's predominantly been used in health. It emerged around about 30 years ago. These two lovely gentlemen here were the originators. There's Bill Miller at the top there, who's based in California, and Stephen Rolnick at the bottom, and he is based in Cardiff. And they were both working a lot with people who were experiencing addiction, and they developed these methods in order to help people change. So it's a very effective and evidence-based approach that is used literally, not being hyperbolic here, in life or death situations. And you'll find that a lot of the videos and a lot of the examples are very much linked to healthcare settings, because that is predominantly where it's been used and been effective. But it is moving into education. And in fact, Stephen Rolnick is bringing out a book in September which looks at the use of MI in education contexts. So over time, it's developed and changed. The key text is called Motivational Interviewing, Helping People Change. And the most recent edition is the 2013 one. And again, in the post-session handout, there's a link to this information about that book. It's about £30. And it is kind of like the Bible on MI. Okay, just to clarify something, some of my friends, when I go on kind of MI courses, when I first started doing it, they were kind of like, really? That doesn't sound like the kind of thing You do. What they were thinking of is motivational speaking, I think. So this kind of stuff, like Tony Robbins, that guy from Wolf of Wall Street as well. People going woo, and talking about rubbish and kind of geeing people up to make massive changes in their life. So it's completely not this. It is definitely not this. So put that out in your mind. Also, even this quote here, massive determined action. That's not what MI is about. It's about realistic action. And just think about how many discarded gym memberships there are out there. It's very much about realistic little steps and towards change that are really coming from within the person themselves. So here's something to keep in mind. Now I realise I might be some of you who might be too young or maybe don't watch enough ITV3 to know who this guy is. But this is Columbo, who's TV detective. And for those of us who are familiar with Columbo and used to watch a lot of him, if you think about the way that he works, if you keep that in mind, it kind of gives you a little reference for how MI works. What Columbo does is he appears to not actually be doing very much. He lets everyone else appear to do the work for him and to basically land themselves in it. And he does it by being very kind of unassuming and really stepping back and not being coercive. He's letting people actually voice the answers and the evidence of whatever themselves. And in fact, I've even heard, I do know some educational psychologists who refer to using the Columbo technique, especially when they're in difficult situations, perhaps as someone who's being a bit confrontational. And when they talk about Columbo technique, what they're talking about is this kind of, really unassuming body language, very relaxed, looking off into the distance and not claiming to have all the answers, but allowing the other person to come up with the answers themselves. So it's just a wee thing to keep in mind. So we're more Columbo than Tony Robbins. What is it? A collaborative, goal-orientated style of communication. Particularly, it's focusing on the language of change. So change is the key word here. And what it's designed to do is to strengthen personal motivation for and commitment to a specific goal, and you do that by eliciting and exploring a person's own reasons for change, not your reasons. We've all got, I'm sure, lots of reasons we could tell people why they should be using a particular piece of technology or a bit of study skills they should be learning. But what we want to do is get that student to come up themselves with the reason that they should be doing things, because that's where the commitment comes from, is them actually coming up with it. And often people, again, sort of in line with the kind of person-centered approach, people do have an inner drive towards growth and towards doing the right thing. And what we're doing is facilitating that. And change, I think, is very key in the needs assessment process, because it's often you're meeting people at a point of transition. Transition can be stressful for people as well. If we think about when people are at the point where they're having a needs assessment, they're often looking at changes to the way that they study, the places they're studying in, strategies they're going to use, and also, I think, essentially the level of independence that they're going to need to use, especially if they're coming straight from school. It might be using different version of a more updated version of an assistive technology, or uptaking tuition in a particular study skill. You might also encounter people who maybe have been referred to you rather than self-referring. They might not actually even understand why they're seeing you as well. So those are the kind of contexts in which motivational interviewing is particularly useful. Now, again, I think, just to be very clear, there's something that's quite alarming, is some people have picked up on motivational interviewing techniques and are kind of misrepresenting them a bit. And that's something that's a wee bit worrying. For instance, there's a book available at the moment called Instant Influence: How to Get Anyone to Do Anything in Less than 7 Minutes. And that is purporting to use motivational interviewing, and that is not what it's for. It's not about persuading people. It's about supporting them and helping them to, uncover their own reasons to change. They might genuinely have absolutely no motivation for change at all, and that has to be acknowledged and honoured. For instance, MI is often used in things like smoking cessation. If someone really doesn't want to stop smoking, you can't manufacture it. So it's about their own reasons, and really, if people are being manipulated, firstly they will know that, and young people in particular will notice that and will be resistant to it, and also it's not going to provide a lasting change. So potential uses in education, already touched on some of these. So you can use it when you're planning and identifying appropriate support strategies, making any kind of decision about the future that someone might feel ambivalent about. What I think in particular, what something really kind of triggered for me was low uptake of support, and particularly things like assistive technology abandonment. I think many of us who work in the field of assistive technology can think of someone who would really benefit from something, a software or a device, and we know it would be really useful to them, and they're issued with it, they're recommended it through DSA, and then they just don't use it, and it sits in a drawer, and we don't often know why. And I think that possibly the reason for this is there's something that earlier on we've missed about that person's motivation to actually use that technology, and it needed to be addressed at the assessment stage. So that's a particular area that I would love to kind of see some research in. And so again, if any of you start to use these techniques, I'd be really interested to hear back from you on how they're working out. Also very useful when looking at things like low attendance or challenging behaviour. Oh, I shouldn't really say that. That's just the other day I was saying we've got to stop saying challenging behaviour. Behaviour which indicates that someone is distressed or is just not getting along with the situation. So addressing behavioural issues as well, it's very useful for. So where it fits in with assessment, you can use it from the start of a needs assessment. It's a very good way to build rapport and to get someone engaged and really ready to give you some good information you can use in your assessment. It's particularly useful for people who have not yet made a decision. You might have people coming to you who know exactly what they want to do, what they need to do, and that's absolutely fine. Where MI is particularly useful is people who are maybe feeling a bit ambivalent. They kind of want to do something new, but they also don't want to do something new because it makes them feel a bit uncomfortable. It can be very effective in one session. In fact, we're going to look at some examples where it has been effective in under 10 minutes in situations where someone has really made an enormous change. So we're going to look in just a moment, because I know it sounds like, oh, this is all quite complex and quite lengthy. I don't have the time to, kind of do all this sorts of stuff. What we're going to look at in a moment is an actual example of how all the techniques come together and can be used in quite a short period of time. Okay, now I know this sounds cheesy, building a bouquet of change talk, but just as I've asked you to keep an image of Columbo in your mind, this is the other thing you're trying to do. What separates or defines MI as opposed to kind of person-centred counselling and things like this is this focus on change talk. This is what you're listening for. You're listening for these clues that someone might be interested in making a change, might be ready to do something, might have the desire to do something. And so the analogy here is that of a florist. What you're doing, you're picking out the bits of change talk, the strengths-based language, and just as a florist picks out the best flowers and arranges them in just the right way so it all looks right, that's what you're doing. You're collecting this change talk, you're putting it into a bouquet, and then you can hand it back to the person. And I'm sorry if that's really cheesy, but I find that quite a helpful analogy to think of and to focus on. I'm just looking. Right, yeah, we're going to have our video in just a little moment. Okay, Alison's okay with it. That's good. I just wasn't sure how that would go down, but I quite like it. Okay, it's evidence-based and it's effective. I'm sure we come across a lot of faddy things, particularly in education, and particularly things related to psychology and things that become flavour of the month, and then they just get abandoned again. You know, thinking of things like, I don't know, brain gym, or, you know, all these kind of things that come along and then just disappear again. You're like, what was all that about? Because MI has been used a lot in healthcare settings, it's been very rigorously analysed, and the evidence for change has been looked at, because, you know, think about NHS isn't going to start using approaches and things to stopping people smoking, to dealing with obesity, to getting people to, you know, address their addictions if it doesn't work. So it has been shown to work. This what I like about this this quote, which was looking at again change talk, is just, you know, look at the words there. These are the things that we really want as needs assessors. We're looking at autonomous motivation, energising, effort, persistence, better outcomes. So, you know, in a nutshell, that's what it's doing. So that's why it's worth looking at. Right, we're going to look at a video in a moment, but first of all, I'm just going to kind of precede it with a little bit here. There's 4 processes involved in an MI interaction. These are engagement, focusing, evoking, and planning. Now, it can take a while to remember those. It took me a while to get my head around these, and it also can sound like this is quite complicated, and I'm not going to have time to do this. But what we're going to look at in just a moment is a video featuring the co-founder of MI, Stephen Rolnick, and in his interaction with, it's a kind of a bit of a staged interaction within a kind of healthcare setting. It will demonstrate how, I think in 6 minutes, he actually does all these things. We're going to look after the video, we're going to break down what these things are. But I think it's useful to actually see it happen and to see how quickly it can work. And while the guy is an actor that he's talking with, he actually did bring a lot of his experience to it. The situation, and also Stephen had never actually seen him before this moment, so he didn't even know what the guy was going to say. So although it's slightly staged, it is, I feel, quite a genuine situation. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to bring up the lovely video of Stephen. So we'll just watch this. If anybody has any difficulties hearing or seeing the video, you can flag that up. Oh, Ellen was on the
I don't think it's the case that people are either not motivated or motivated. And in fact, motivational interviewing was born from conversations with very, very difficult people who were classified as not at all motivated to change and very resistant to treatment. Well, Mr. Smith, that's your medication sorted out.
Good.
Blood pressure's a little on the high side.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if I could raise the subject of your weight.
What?
I wondered if we could spend just a couple of minutes talking about your weight.
You are joking, aren't you? I mean, look, I've made time in my day to come here.
Yeah.
I'm kept in your waiting room for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. You know,
Yeah.
if I make an appointment with
Yeah.
a client for 10, I expect them to start at 10, not quarter to 11.
Right, and so you're busy enough. And
Yeah, I've got other things to do. I've got
Yeah.
accounts to do. I've got clients to coming in.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily easy for you to make the time to come down, and you had to wait in the waiting room. And now I raise the subject of weight.
Yeah,
just
I mean,
when you're
okay,
thinking
fair
of going.
enough. I've got to have my blood pressure
Yeah.
medication changed, but I
Yeah.
really haven't got time to talk about my weight. I mean, you know, I'm aware of my weight, I'm aware of the problems, and I'm also aware of the solutions.
Right.
So I don't really need a discussion. It's just I've got too much to do at the moment, you know.
Right, and so it's been a bit of a rush for you coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about the wait in the waiting room.
It's bad form, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's not easy for you because you'd like to go really soon, and here I am asking you to spend just a couple of minutes with me.
Yeah, but basically I've got things to do. I've got to get back to the office. I've got a pile of work that I've got to deal with.
Yep.
And every moment out of my day means I have to work in the evening or weekends.
It counts.
Well, when you're self-employed, you haven't got a choice,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It's up to you. Just a couple of minutes.
Well, I'm here now, so yeah, okay, if it's a couple of minutes, yeah?
I promise.
Okay, because I really must get on.
I want to simply ask you how you feel about it.
About what? What, losing weight? Well, obviously, I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I'm aware that I'm over my balance weight, but I know that it's causing problems. I mean, obviously, I get out of breath if I have to do something a bit hurry, and I realise that I'm on this blood pressure.
Right.
And maybe that's probably contributing to it.
Right. So you can see the links between your weight and your health, and you'd like things to be.
Yeah, I mean, there are other things, but I mean, yeah, the weight is something I would like to get hold of, get the handle on. Yeah.
You'd like to if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I know the theories of a bit of exercise on a regular basis, a balanced diet, but unfortunately, because of my lifestyle, because of being self-employed as an accountant, it's finding the time to exercise, but also finding the time to sort of think, okay, I'm going to go shopping for this, that, and the other, and I'm going to prepare a meal.
Yeah.
With me, it's very often
ready meals and that sort of thing.
Yeah, food on the run, you know.
Okay, yeah.
Grazing.
Let me see if I can summarize what you've said, and then we'll see what next. You lead a busy life.
Yeah.
You run a business, and you've got a lot to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're aware of the links between your health and your weight, and you are concerned to some extent about that. And ideally, it sounds like you'd like to do something about it. It's just that your life is busy and rushed, and you tend to use convenience foods in order to get the work done.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, because of my lifestyle, food is just fuel.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because I'm juggling all these balls and I don't want to drop any.
I get it. And so if you could fit it in, you would like things to be different, but that's not so easy.
No.
Okay. Can I suggest that you come back and see me in a couple of weeks' time just to chat about this?
Okay, I'm up for that, but it's going to be the same problem of A, finding time,
Right.
and B, if I make an appointment,
Right.
I don't expect to be kept waiting for half an hour
Exactly.
or whatever, because it's...
Exactly. I tell you what might be a nice solution is if you come down first appointment, and I give you an appointment at 8:30.
That'd be good.
Then there'll be absolutely no waiting. And the purpose of that visit will be to have a look at how you really feel about how you could move forward and somehow fit in a more healthier lifestyle into the busy work life that you've got.
I'll maybe have a look at my schedules, see whether
Yeah.
anything can be arranged, or I can pass something on to some, and so that so it's not a wasted interview.
Yeah.
So I can come here and say, okay, I've looked at my schedules, I've looked at things,
Good.
whatever.
Good. And see if you can fix it up and also give some thought to what we've talked about.
Yeah, of course.
Good stuff. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all the
Sorry I went
best
off a
then.
bit. Yeah.
A few well-chosen words, a very thoughtful question, can be worth more than many mouthfuls of busy talk.
Well, I want to try to stop smoking.
Hello everyone, I'm just going to stop that there because the next kind of minute is just kind of an advert for more British Medical Journal videos. I hope everyone was okay with that. As I've said there in the chat box, in your post-session handout, there's a link to that video as well. So if you want to go back to it or whatever, it's there. So that was a very short interaction with someone who was actually quite resistant and was quite annoyed as well. And it showed within a very short period of time how the practitioner was able to engage that person, build a rapport with them, show that they were understood. He focused on the issue. He managed to evoke Mr. Smith's own ideas about how he might tackle his problems, and they also did a bit of planning there at the end as well about his next appointment. And you'll notice that planning was very specific as well about what exactly would happen and when it would happen as well. So you can see why this is so appealing to people working in healthcare, where GPs have 10 minutes for an appointment, and that has really encouraged the patient to take on some responsibility there. So there's no reason why this couldn't also happen in an education setting as well, where we want students to be more independent and to really take forward the recommendations and to use their technology to come back to you if they have a difficulty. We're going to break down some of these processes. So your first stage, and this is really key, absolutely key, is the engagement process. Time is not wasted spending it focusing on this engagement. So you'll see what Professor Rolnick was doing there. He was really respectful of the guy who was kind of complaining about, being kept waiting and stuff. It was respectful. He showed that he could be trusted. He was asking open questions. He was reflecting back, in a very understanding way, just those statements, rather than saying, it sounds like you're feeling like this. He was just like, it's a lot to take on. It's, you've got a lot on. It's that just showing, as Phil's pointing out there, it's very congruent with the whole Carl Rogers humanistic approach. But what he's doing is almost kind of speeding it up. So it's very much fits with that. So if you have done any training in counselling or anything human-centred, this should fit like really nicely. So just some kind of friendly opening questions there. Some of you might be already thinking, when we see students for the first time, we have to fill out a form with them, and there was no form filling and things going on there. How does that fit together? Again, that can be introduced in a very kind of informal, respectful way, where it's not like, I'm going to ask you a battery of questions now and you're going to answer them. It's very much like, do your engagement, and you can say to someone, like, I've got this form here. Is it okay if we go through some of this just now? The office needs this. Really putting it very much in their court and kind of like, I'm not here to grill you, but we do have to fill out this form. So it can be done. What's happening there as well is there's real focusing. So you're not looking at general stuff, it's really looking at clarifying the direction into which the person wants to move and really maintaining that. And that's listening for any hints of change talk, any things of, I do know the things I should be doing, and, it would be helpful, and I suppose I could do this. These are the things that you're wanting to reinforce. Sometimes students will have a very clear focus. There might be several options you can consider together. Sometimes the focus might be totally unclear. You might have someone who's just like, well, everything's a mess and I don't know what to do. And in that case, you go back to engagement to really get understanding that person and to start to pull out the threads of what this person needs to do to move forward with their studies, with their ability to be an independent learner. Again, to show kind of respect and a kind of mutual, a kind of coming alongside a student rather than leading them or pushing them, is to think about what you're doing as information exchange rather than advising or being an expert. Ways to do that is to introduce information. You can ask the person if there's any information they want. You can just ask if it's okay to bring it in. So, I've thought of something that might help. Other students have found this helpful. Could I show you it? Offer small chunks, especially if it's something that's new to somebody, giving them time to reflect and testing out their feelings about it, and keep exploring the student's own interpretation of the information. We might think, I've given this person very clear, straightforward information about something. They'll understand this. We have to check that they're understanding us, about why we're showing strategies, why we're suggesting them, and what that means to the person, what they'll actually have to do. So we saw there was a difficult topic raised there, and this is something that might have to come up in these assessment situations. Sometimes people might have a very clear support need that they don't actually like to talk about. And that's not necessarily something that, we might think of being super sensitive, like things like mental health and things. Sometimes, I've worked with students who really were uncomfortable with even acknowledging or talking about the fact they had quite a severe visual impairment. They just didn't want to acknowledge it at all. And yet it really needed to be talked about in terms for their own independence and their own even ability to get around to college and things. So what you can do, you can summarize what you've been talking about, raising the kind of sensitive issue, and then would it be all right if we talked about this? So put it over to them, like, is it all right? And so asking permission, also apologizing as well, is very important. You notice that in the clip there was an apology there for the weight. It's doing things like that, again, it shows respect and that you're willing to kind of take responsibility for things not going right. So we call that agenda mapping. Don't want to get too jargonistic and things here, but that's if you go into the further reading and stuff, it'll talk more about agenda mapping. So here's another thing. I mean, something that might come up in an needs assessment. You don't know, but you can change the wording depending on the situation. But here's, how do you say to somebody you think they're drinking too much and they've got a real problem with that? So this is a kind of example that's used in the kind of key textbook about bringing it up. So listening to troubles you're having with your stomach, I've thought of one thing that might turn out to be important. And would it be okay? Would it be all right if we talked about your use of alcohol? The person at that point has the option to say no as well. So it is giving them some power in the situation as well. Okay, so I'm racing through these because I'm really aware of the time. So I'm like, we need to kind of move on, but it's just to give you a bit of an overview of what's involved here. So evoking, this is really key. This is the really kind of MI. We're getting into full-on MI here with evoking, and that's eliciting the student's own motivation for change, harnessing their own ideas and feelings about how they might do it. Scaling is useful here. Now, those of you who join us on 1st of April for Carol's presentation webinar about useful tools and tips for assessments, I'm pretty sure she'll be talking about scaling. And these are something you might be doing already. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you'll be able to use Dragon Naturally Speaking, something like that. Then you use the answer that they give to evoke some strengths and some motivation as well. So if someone comes back as well, I would say 3 out of 10. That's pretty low, but what you can ask them is, why is it 3 and not a 2? And by asking them that, they will probably come up with some strengths, and that's something, that's good things to focus on. And then you can ask them, what would it take to get you to, say, a 5? And then again, what would it take? They'll be coming up with ideas and suggestions for how they might improve their skills. Now again, you're going to get a handout afterwards. You can download it from the webinar at the end, or you can have it in your email. DARN questions they're called, and that's an acronym of desire, ability, reasons and need. I'm going to bring it up just to show you. You'll get a copy of this, so don't worry about it. These are things you can change the wording or whatever. You can have this by your side and just see how these questions go. So these are things like asking about someone's desire for change. This is where you'll gauge their motivation, and that they will actually start to learn themselves how motivated they are to do things. This kind of process as well, it's very useful because it gives students a lot of insight to themselves, and that will be helpful for them as they go on through life, especially when they are in employment and things like this. I've just noticed Margaret's chipped in there. It's solution focused. It's very solution focused and fits beautifully with that approach. So here's some questions. What are you looking for from this session, or from this assessment? Moving on to ability, again, lots of strengths will come out there as well, and it will also provide you with useful information about how much training somebody needs and about what kind of complexity of technology that they're confident with using. So there's some goodies there. As I say, you can print this out afterwards. Reasons, getting their specific reasons why. So why would you want to get support with your writing? Again, they're going to convince themselves there. Oh, that popped back up. You can ask, what might be good reasons for, checking the batteries in your device, or for using this bit of technology, or for turning up for your training sessions. Something I find very useful is that need is actually talking about urgency, and that can really make people realise, okay, I don't actually have all the time in the world to do this. They will come up themselves with, actually, I need to get this sorted. I need to start making these steps, not necessarily like this huge, massive life change, but start, just making some tiny steps forward to feel that they're becoming more independent, that they're addressing their own support needs as well. So you'll get that afterwards, so don't worry about that. There we go. Okay, planning. Again, this is something I'm sure you're all doing already, is looking at planning. You'll know when you're ready to start planning, when the student is talking more and more about how they're going to change and what changes they're going to make and what they're going to do, and they're not kind of like a bit uncertain about whether they're even going to do it. What you're listening for here, and I think this is on the next slide, is kind of more active language of, things that they can do. Well, I could do this and I could do that, and maybe I could try that. That's indicating someone's ready to start the planning. You're also looking for specifics, absolute specifics about when people are going to do things, so that there's no ambiguity and that people don't kind of drift off. Again, you can do some more information exchange here. And it's very collaborative as well. So this is, remember I was talking about that bouquet of change talk? This is where you present it back to the person, kind of metaphorically speaking. So you're kind of recapitulating, you're summarising all this wonderful kind of change talk and solutions and strengths, and you're presenting that back to the person. Again, I've got their specifics, but what's really important is to also predict what might be barriers in the future with the student, and let them know that they can come back to you, look at solutions, what might get in the way, what might be a problem. Think about things that might change over the course of their studies, whether it's differences in the tasks they have to perform, or it might be changes in their own needs as well, particularly if, say, they have a health problem which can change, go back and forth, or might get progressively more complex. So those are things to put into the planning situation as well. Yeah, if your planning is too general, or if it's too ambitious, break it down to smaller pieces. Always kind of undershoot a bit as well. Yeah, listen for mobilising change talk. Something I meant to kind of say earlier, I just want to pop this in now, is especially when we were talking about raising kind of tricky subjects or difficult things, is people looking out for people trying to cover up that they're not as confident with technology as they think they should be. Especially now, we're all talking about digital natives and all this, and actually a lot of research finds that many teenagers are a lot less confident with technology than we assume them to be, and that's because a lot of the technology they're using is their phones or games consoles, things like this, things like using email, Word, using Windows. They're actually quite a lot are not as great at that as we would assume them to be. And many students, especially from poorer backgrounds, do not have access always to laptops or PCs at home. They might just have their phone and that's it. So things to watch for is things like people typing really, really quickly because they think that doing something quickly is what's your question, Alison? Doing something really quickly is a way to kind of cover up, or it shows expertise. Alison's raised a question there: what if we're not confident with technology ourselves? Again, I think that's what's important. There is to be honest about that, and to seek out support and training and help for yourself. So, for instance, if you're wanting to look at some technology with someone and maybe you're not that confident with it, is there someone else in your institution who can come in to help out? Also make use of things like YouTube demonstrations and things like this, and just be completely upfront with people of, I find this quite difficult too, but I know that other people find it useful, so shall we explore together, how people use Dragon and what it looks like. There's so many YouTube videos demonstrating things, but there are solutions to that, and especially if, I'm not sure, Alison, if you've been on any training with us on the PDA inclusiveness, but we go into quite a lot of detail with that about building up your own skills and about how to introduce technology and things. So I would say, yeah, be honest and open and come alongside the student, learn with them. I think that's a really cool thing to do. Okay, sorry, was I going on a bit there? Good question though, very good question. Right, what I'm going to do is we're going to finish up with another little video, again just to give you a break. Yeah, Margaret's come up there. Yeah, death of the digital natives. Yeah, I think that's really, it's actually kind of quite harmful, I think, to our young people, because it's making enormous assumptions about people, and yeah, it's not helpful. Thanks for that link, Mags. That's absolutely brilliant. We can share that afterwards as well. Yeah, make no assumptions at all about our young people being, amazing at technology, because many of them are not. I think it's, we see them doing things like setting up, things on smart TVs, and we think, oh, they know loads about this, but it's not quite the same, is it, as kind of, writing an essay or whatever. We're going to finish up with, just before I round things up, with another little short video from someone who has done, the context here is she's done a 3-hour motivational interviewing workshop on a Saturday morning, gone back to work on a Monday, and come back to see the trainers at Monday lunchtime. And I just think this is quite a powerful and positive example of how quickly people can get going with this. Again, it's from a healthcare setting, because at the moment there's just not the content related to education because it's so new. So this might be your opportunity to become the first people to do these things. So let's have a look at, I'll pop the video on, Elma. I'm just going to move it forward about a minute because there's a lot of preamble, and then we'll start it.
Followed by a training with Dr. Stephen Ronick, which was just held last weekend. That was about 7 hours. And
can I stop you there? Can I stop you there and ask you, when you came for that training on Saturday, it was just a couple of days ago, you had questions in your mind about a particular really difficult decision you were trying to make with a patient. What was that about? Because you came and spoke to me and said, how can MI be used with this? Can you describe what the dilemma was for you?
Okay, the dilemma was because I had been trying everything that I'd known in my 4 hours of training, and it was a difficult situation because he known in my 4 hours of training, and it was a difficult situation because he had been someone I've been working with for years, and he was at a major crossroad in his life. He had this condition that he actually needed consider dialysis on a fairly urgent basis for an advanced renal disease, and he absolutely refused to even consider about that, even though I had a relationship with him. So I was really desperate because he'd also seen the renal physician and refused to take anyone's advice. Yeah.
So here was a really difficult decision that you felt a patient needed to make, and you'd put a lot of effort in, it sounds like, over the previous week, with telephone calls and consultations to try and get him to change his mind and make this decision. And then something happened to you during the training that made you think about you might be able to handle it differently. What happened in the training that made things different for you?
Oh, the training was really wonderful. It really taught me 5 things that were important. Number 1 was slow down. Yeah, I'm afraid I've been very worried about him because I've actually known him through the years. I didn't want to lose him to, a medical illness. And so far he's been able to listen very well, but this time he was just resisting. So it reminded me to slow down. And we also learned about the importance for engagement. And I realized, I haven't really been engaging him afresh every time I meet him. It was like, I thought I'd known him like many years ago, and I've always had that engagement.
Almost like there was no need to re-engage.
Yeah, no need to re-engage. So the reminder to re-engage, and then the need to actually listen to him and listen to what he was really feeling. And then the need to reflect, really reflect, just reflect and reflect and reflect. So I actually went back and I actually started engagement again anew and started to really reflect what he said. And this time it was within about 5 to 8 minutes after my reflection, he actually opened up his heart. And after that, within the series of 2 minutes, he actually had a lot of change talk. It was like a little bit he would share, and then it would be a change talk. A little bit more and he would change talk, and it was a little bit more and it would be a change talk when he never had this change talk regarding his kidney problem before. And it was things that he was just mentioning about. Now I'm starting to think it is about my kidneys, which he has been refusing to even mention or even think about that. And he even asked me about, now I've been thinking about dialysis, and over, the several months he's been refusing to think about it. It's like, in just that short training I was able to apply. It was really useful. And in fact, he even told me right now, I'm really thinking and I want to go back and see the renal physician again. It's like, wow. And that's really a breakthrough, because in the last 2 months, he's actually been avoiding this area completely. Yeah.
So this was, Saturday was the training?
Yes.
And then you've already seen the patient. It's Monday afternoon. When did you see the patient?
I just saw this patient on Monday morning at about 10 o'clock.
This morning at 10
Yeah,
o'clock.
and so within about like 10:15, he was out of my room, whereas our normal consultations would be 20 minutes to half an hour. He was out of my room within 10-15 minutes, and he felt good, I felt good. It's like, whew!
And so it's quite strange that, because you're actually saying that the use of listening saved you time.
The use of the effective way of am I listening with the reflections saved me time, yes. Because I was listening before, but I wasn't doing this sort of reflection when I was actually reflecting his feelings to him and asking him, because I was like relaxed. And previously it's like I would have a particular agenda, so it's like, and what we learned was during the Saturday was slow down, you don't know where it's going to go, just let it be. And that made the difference. Slow it down and let it go. I don't know where it's going to go. And I had no agenda, and it was so successful. It's like, oh my, no agenda is actually better.
So funnily enough, the more you slowed down, the better was your progress, and the less you tried to create a direction and oblige this person to go in a particular direction, the better was your progress.
Yes, in fact, he was able to bring the focus himself in the picture. And I was so astonished. The focus actually came from him. He was actually talking about renal. He was actually talking more about his kidney. And he was talking about more of the symptoms pertaining to his kidney. He was actually talking about, now I'm open to consider.
Okay.
He actually gave the focus himself, and he was actually giving questions that I could actually invoke more thought from him, whereas I couldn't do any of that before.
That's really interesting. So he knew what you were interested in, but more important, he knew what was in his own best interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was astonishing because previously he would just be very resistant.
Yeah.
Today, instead of resistant, he was actually like, I'm no longer resistant. I'm actually, I don't know. Is that openness?
Openness and clarity of thinking that allowed him to make a decision.
And he was calmer. He's usually so upset and angry, and therefore he would shut down.
Yeah.
And I will feel his anger. Today he wasn't at all angry. In fact, I was very calm and he was very calm. We were both very calm. It was quick and fast.
And calmness makes the difference.
Yes. I was so astonished, and I realized that just by little bit I had to change it.
Yeah, it was a small change for you made a big difference for him. Yeah, well, thank you so very, very much for sharing your ideas with us, and we'll use this in training, and I'm sure you will stand out for many people as a beacon of hope in busy practice. So thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you, Stephen Rowling, for teaching us, and Dr. Fiona McMaster. What we learned that day was really powerful.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Excellent. Oh, that's fantastic, Doctor.
Okay, so there we go. That's I hope that played okay for everybody. I know it kind of stopped a few times. I think that's more kind of YouTubey thing. But yeah, what a nice story to finish on. And I just think, she is just so wonderful. And in the message there, that saved someone's life. Potentially it's kind of, that's how useful this stuff is. So I think if it can be useful for that, the possibilities are kind of limitless, I think. It's so I think, yeah, the applications in education are tremendous. Oh my goodness, we've got 1 minute to go. If you have any questions, suggestions, feedback, if you try anything and you have interesting experiences, because as I say, this is very new, so you guys are kind of at the, in terms of using in a needs assessment context. So anything that you want to feed back, I would love to get involved in, accumulating information or research, whatever. If you would like to do full-on training, again, in the post-session handout, there is information on where you can get training. You can actually train with Stephen Rolnick in Cardiff, and there's some sessions coming up over the summer, 2-day courses, and in fact Bill Miller is coming over from the US. I'm sounding like an advert here for it, but actually reasonably priced. It's £350 for 2 days, and that is with the creators of the approach, and it's very hands-on, kind of interactive. But the main thing is that you kind of never really stop with MI. It's kind of something that you just build up over the years of it's more an approach, rather than something you get a certificate in and then it's like, okay, you do it. So I really hope that's been useful.